Assalamu alaikum viewers, welcome back in another videos in Research Officials with Kausar Ahmed, and today I'll talk about electrochemical cells, that is galvanic or voltaic cell versus electrolytic cell. So please keep watching. And the content to be discussed is the interaction, definitions, mechanism, examples, differences, and finally conclusions with some references for the further studies. So if we just to define the electrochemical cell, like it is a device which either generate electricity from the chemical reactions occurring in it, or consume electricity supplied to it to occur the chemical reactions. That means the electrochemical cell, either it will generate electricity or it will consume electricity. And the types of the electrochemical cell is galvanic or voltaic cell, and another is electrolytic cell. So let's define further their definitions. If we further define the definitions, like galvanic or voltaic cell, it is a device that can produce electricity by the spontaneous chemical reactions at both electrodes. So if we summarize the definitions, we can get that it can produce electricity, and the nature of the chemical reaction is spontaneous in nature. And so overall, we just convert the chemical energy into electrical energy in this process. And on the other hand, we get the electrolytic cell, that is a cell that can utilize, or we said already that it consume electricity from the external sources to occur the chemical reactions, that is non-spontaneous in nature. And summarization, we can get like utilization of the electricity in this electrolytic cell, and the nature of the chemical reaction is non-spontaneous. So in this process, we just convert the electrical energy into chemical energy. The process is called electrolysis. So if we just look over the mechanism of the galvanic or voltaic cell, we get that galvanic or voltaic cell is composed of two separate compartments, and compartment is actually contains different salt solutions, like M1 salt solution and M2 salt solution. And there are separate electrodes also, and this electrodes also connected with the external circuit, and it may be bulb or any kind of voltmeter or ammeter to measure the electric power. And there is a salt bridge in between them to maintain the actually ion balance in the both cells, to actually make the continuation of the process to get the energy continuously. And the anode, which is negatively charged and or acceleration occurred, and the reaction will look like this. M1, actually the electrode actually corrode, like it produce metal ion and electrons. And on the other hand, we get the cathode that is positively charged, or reaction occurred, and the reaction will look like this. It just solves from the salt solution, the metal ion accept the electron to become a neutral species, and the produced electron in the oxidation reaction just travels from the anode to cathode to occur the total chemical reactions. As we already said that to maintain the continuation of the process, we need to make the balance of the ions in both cells. That's why we need solvents, like in case of actually M1 salt solution, we get the cation more. To actually maintain the balance, we need anion. That's why the solvent supplies the anion to the M1 salt solution. And on the other hand, we can know that because of the reduction reaction in the M2 salt solution, the scarcity of the metal ion, actually cation, actually reduced because of the reduction reaction. That's why we need to reduce the anion from this salt solution, or we need to add some positive cations from the salt solution. And on the other hand, electrolytic cell, that is actually contains one single container where electrolytes are kept, or there is a solution of the electrolytes, and two electrodes in the same container, and they are connected with the external power supply. We already know that the electrolytic cell actually is composed of that actually need external power supply to occur the chemical reaction. That's why you need to connect this electrode from we need to connect these electrodes with the external power supply, like DC power supply or any other power supply. And anode also here, and it's positively charged, point of noted, and there is an oxidation reaction occurred as usual, and the cathode it is negative, a reduction reaction occurred. And when we connect this external circuit or external power supply with this electrode, we get that we know that the DC power supply has two different poles, like positive and negative pole, and the sign of the electrode is defined by this sign of the DC power supply. Like if we connect the electrode with the positive pole of the DC power supply, the electrode is positively charged, and on the other hand, if we connect the electrode with the negative pole of the DC power supply, this electrode is negatively charged. And because of the charge in the electrode, the electrolytes in this solution are attracted by this electrodes. Like if we just think about the positive pole of the electrode, electrode 1, it is positively charged and it just attracts the negative electrolytes or anions, and these anions actually release the electrons and became oxidized. As oxidation reaction occurred here, that's why there is anode. The sign, because of the it is connected with the positive pole, and the anode because in this electrode oxidation reaction occurred, and the negative pole of the DC power supply supplies the electron, and this electron is accepted by these cations of the electrolytes, and then is electrolytes like positive cation electrolytes become neutral species. So this half cell reaction, as you can see in the screen, anode half cell reaction is actually anion just leave the electron, and the cathode half cell reaction, this cation receive the electron, become the neutral species. And if we look over the cathode of both cells, like a galvanic voltaic cell and electrolytic cell, that anode is negative in galvanic voltaic cell and anode is positive in electrolytic cell. And if we just consider the galvanic cell, we get that the main source of electron is the chemical reaction that occurred in the M1 electrode. That means this is the main source of electrons through the oxidation reaction. That's why this is the negative pole. So sign comes from the source of the electron, and the name anode comes from the oxidation reaction. And similarly, if we consider the electrolytic cell, the sign comes from the DC power supply, pole of the DC power supply, and the reaction actually oxidation and reaction, and the name actually anode and cathode come from this both type of reactions. Hope you get the point. And if we summarize the mechanism, we get that galvanic voltaic cell contains negative anode or oxidation occurred, and the reaction like this, and the electrons already said that it just travels through the external circuit, and the cathode, which is positively charged or reaction occurred, and the cation accepts the electron, become the neutral species. And on the other hand, electrolytic cell is actually contain anode with positive pole, and oxidation occurred, reaction look like this, and anion leaves the electron, one or more electrons, and become the neutral species. And cathode, which is negatively charged because this is connected with the negative pole of the DC power supply, and the reaction occurred here, and the cation accept the electron, become the neutral species. So now we can take some examples of the galvanic voltaic cell to be more actually to make things clear. We can take an example like galvanic voltaic cell. We know that it is the composed of two different container. One container contain the one types of metal salt solution, like here we can see that the zinc metal salt solution in zinc electrode, and here we can see that the zinc electrode in a zinc metal salt solution, and the copper electrode in the copper salt solution. So the electrode must be the same as the cation of the salt solution. So as the reaction just proceed, we get that the zinc electrode actually just became just as the process proceed, and the zinc electrode actually corrode oxidized because two electrons actually released from this electrode, and this electron travels through the external circuit and it reaches to the cathode, and this electron is accepted by the copper cation, and copper became the neutral species and deposited on the electrode. Here zinc electrode is corrode, and copper electrode is actually became the heavy or healthy, like you can say that becomes fatty. And the total cell direction, you can see zinc solid became the zinc sulfate aqueous solution, and the copper sulfate aqueous solution into it just became the copper solid. And on the other hand, electrolytic cell is actually, you can take an example like electrolysis of the molten potassium chloride. Our electrolytes is actually potassium chloride, and the DC power supply is connected with the two electrodes, and the positive pole of the electrode is anode, and the negative pole of the DC power supply is connected with the negatively charged cathode, which is actually negative, and it attracts the cation, and the cation become the neutral species, just the electron. On the other hand, we see that the chlorine is attracted by the anode electrode, and where chlorine actually release the electron, became the chlorine. It becomes the chlorine gas, and thus the electron is just travels from this electrode to another electrode. So this this is the example of the electrolytic cell. And if we take some real application of this to both side of cell, like galvanic or voltaic cell is just convert the chemical energy into electrical energy, and this is actually non-rechargeable battery, a series of cells. We daily use these types of battery in our daily purposes to run our different kind of small accessories. And electrolytic cell is actually when we just try to produce the pure hydrogen for the electrolysis of water, and this is called the electrolytic cell. And on the other hand, if you want to produce sodium hydroxide by the electrolysis of sodium chloride, we need to produce, or we need to set up a electrolytic cell. And the differences is summarized in these tables. You can pause these videos to see them in details. We already discussed about this, and there are some references. You can go there for the further studies. So thank you very much. See you again. Allah Hafiz.